One thing I would change about the world is more access to holistic, natural ways to heal our mind, body, and soul.
I would have less screen time and more soul time, more looking each other in the eye, more sitting across the table.
One thing that I would change about the world is me. It's got to start within us. It's got to start individually.
One thing I would change about the world is how we love. All of us want to be loved, but I don't think we put enough importance on how we love.
Filipenses 4:7 that says, "Y la paz que sobrepasa todo entendimiento guardará tu corazón y tus pensamientos en Cristo Jesús."
I think we live in a society where we feel like we have to show up a certain way, but I love that God meets us where we are, even in the suffering, even when we're hurting.
There is a verse in the Bible in Matthew 7:12 that I love that says, "Treat others the same way you want to be treated."
My experience, the only way that happens, the only way people really change is through Jesus.
One thing I would change about the world is selfless love. Taking the I am second approach to life.
For everyone to experience perfect peace. We're all wrestling collectively, individually, and as a nation within the world. And perfect peace is found in the heart and the hope and the truth of the gospel.
I believe that if we have healthier marriages, we have healthier families. And if we have healthier families, we have healthier communities. And healthier communities mean a healthier world.
And that's what I would change.
All right, who's glad to be at church this morning? Good. My name's Dave. It's good to be with you. Let me ask you this question. What's the best way that we could grow our church? What's the best way at all of our campuses? What's the best way we could grow our church? Because I notice as I drive into all of our locations, we are not taking advantage of the church marquee sign. Are you familiar with the church marquee sign? I have some favorites. I found them on the internet. These are actual church marquee sign. Here's the first one. Don't let worries kill you. Let the church help. So probably well-intentioned, you know. I think some dads got together and came up with this one. When you throw mud at someone, you lose ground. Oh, the groan, right? Anyway. All right, now this is interesting. Whoever stole our AC units, keep one. It's hot where you're going. Welcome to our church. We're so glad you're here. All right, here's one. Church, what's missing? You are. Aw, isn't that good? All right. Now, I know maybe half of you will like this. God shows no favoritism, but our sign guy does. Go Cubs. Right? Some of you are like, yeah. Some of you are like, boo. You're booing God. That's what you're doing. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but I want to be in the church boardroom when someone comes up and goes, you know what? Here's our idea to grow the church, okay? If we could just put really great dad jokes on the sign, everybody's going to come, right? We're at a series called Unleashed. And what I love about this series and looking at the book of Acts is that in the book of Acts, it is the story of the original church. Like right after Jesus dies and ascends, raises from the dead and ascends, and the church begins at Pentecost. And it is the story of how that church just explodes on the scene. Within just a couple of centuries, a couple of 100 years, the church goes to basically 50% of the Roman Empire population. Millions and millions and millions of people. And mind you, that is with no social media. There's no printing press. There's no TV. There's no internet. There's none of that. There's no church marquee signs. And yet somehow the church just explodes. And so what I've loved about this series is the opportunity to kind of look over the shoulder of that newly emerging church and see what we can learn about how to do church the best way possible here in Chicagoland and around the world. And today we find ourselves in Acts 17. That's the passage that I've been given. And when I look at Acts 17, in particular, I think Paul has something to teach us about evangelism or witnessing to people. You know, we looked at Acts 1:8, which became sort of the theme for the entire book of Acts, right there in the first chapter, Acts 1:8 says, you will be my witnesses. You could say you will be my evangelists. You will be my representatives, my people in the world to tell people about Jesus. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. The idea there is it's going to start in Jerusalem. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get bigger. We're going to spread to the ends of the earth. And so we're going to talk about what that looks like a little bit today. Evangelism. The first thing I want to share is this: the motivation of evangelism. The motivation. Why would we even do it? In Acts 17, verse 16, it says, while Paul was waiting for them, other church folks, in Athens, he was greatly distressed. Why? He was greatly distressed. His heart was moved to see that the city was full of idols. And so he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews, with the God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. In other words, he starts doing all kinds of evangelism. He's in the church, he's in the synagogues, he's in the streets, he's just telling anybody that he can about Jesus. Why? Well, it's because he got distressed, his heart was moved, because he came into a city that had all kinds of idols everywhere. Paul was watching an entire city of people who were worshiping idols that couldn't love them back. Worshiping stone and wood and metal that could not give people security or significance or fulfillment in any way. And Paul goes, man, that's just so disheartening. That's so sad when you have a heavenly Father who is just living and active and wanting to have a relationship with you, and yet these people are putting their worship on these false idols. There's a philosopher, and we're going to see that this is a city of philosophers. There's a philosopher, Blaise Pascal, which if I could have chosen my own first name, Blaise, you know? But Blaise Pascal talked about each and every one of us is born with a God-shaped hole in our heart. And he says that throughout our life, we try and fill that God-shaped void in our heart with all sorts of different things. For some of us, it's achievement. For others of us, it's experiences. For others of us, we do everything we can to numb our pain so that we don't feel the void. And what Blaise would say is the same thing I would say, and I think what Paul would say is that the only way to fill a God-shaped void is with God himself. These philosophers in Athens, there were two predominant philosophical philosophies, Stoicism and Epicureanism. Stoicism would say life is really hard, therefore try not to feel anything and do everything you can to just work your way through life. The Stoics were known for just grit your teeth, discipline. You know, there's two ways to do things, do it right or do it again. You know, these Stoics. And then there were the Epicureans. And the Epicureans were like, it's not that life's hard, it's that life's short, baby. So party. Eat, drink, and be merry. Life is short, so just enjoy yourself. And Paul is watching these types of philosophies, which, by the way, I think there's probably some Stoics and Epicureans in our world today. They may not recognize themselves that way, but I think that's a philosophy that we have today as well. How can I get more achievement, more discipline? How can I party like crazy? Paul saw this and it broke his heart. It became his motivation to tell people about Jesus. Here's the thing. You won't care about evangelism until you care about people. Does that make sense? And if you care about people, then you will care about evangelism. I don't know if you recognize the name Penn and Teller. It's actually a couple of guys that did magic shows in Vegas for a long time. They've been on TV, but Penn Jillette is one of those folks. That's him right there. and he's a magician, but he's also an devout atheist and doesn't mind letting people know. He's been on TV sort of debating folks. He's got a license plate that says dog on, which backwards he said is no God. So he's an atheist, but after a show one evening, a fan approached him and said, hey, great show, loved the show, and I just felt like God wanted me to give you a gift. And he gave him a Bible, a New Testament in particular with the book of Psalms attached. And something happened in Penn's heart. He took that home and it just moved him in a certain way. And he actually got online and recorded a video about how it affected him in a profound way. And I just want to read to you a little bit of the transcript from that video. He says, I've always said, that I don't respect people who don't proselytize, witness, evangelize. I don't respect that at all. Because if you believe that there's a heaven and a hell, and people could be going to hell or not getting into eternal life or whatever, and you think that, well, it's not really worth telling them this because it would make it socially awkward. And atheists who think that people shouldn't proselytize, just leave me alone and keep your religion to yourself. He goes, how much do you have to hate somebody to not proselytize? How much do you have to hate somebody to believe that everlasting life is possible and not tell them? I mean, if I knew there was a truck barreling towards you and you didn't see it and you didn't even believe it when I told you about it, at some point I'd tackle you, right? And this is even more important than that. That's an atheist telling us two things. He says, if you believe it. And he says, if you believe and if you care. And I gotta be honest, I took that this week and I was about to come up here, my preaching instinct sort of kicked in, and I thought, I'm gonna spend 3, 4, 5 minutes on, do you really believe? I was gonna come at you. I was gonna step on toes. I was gonna be like, listen, do you really believe in heaven and hell? And you have friends that are headed to hell? Do you really believe? Because if you really believed, you'd get out there and you'd tell people about it. Something in me started to go there. Another part of me went to the other thing he said, is that you gotta care about people. So part of me wanted to get out here and go, do you really care about the people you say you love? You say you love your friends. You want to spend eternity without your friends. This was this preaching thing that clicked in me that I wanted to go there. And then I thought to myself, how many times do I walk by people? I don't tell them about Jesus. Sometimes I'm on a plane, I'm sitting next to somebody, they strike up a conversation with me, headphones. I've got a captive audience. I believe and I care. But I realize it's like so many of the other things in my life that I believe and I care about that I just don't get around to doing. You might need to go to another church, I don't know. Because here's the thing, there are things in my life that I care about, that I believe and I don't get around to. Fitness. What about you? Saving money. Certain medical preventive procedures that you go, yeah, I believe it and I should do it, but I don't ever get around to it. And there are these things in our life that I think what happens is life happens. I'm just being transparent with you. I hope I don't know if you're connecting with this at all, but I think soccer practice happens and 50 hours a week at work happens. And a great Netflix series comes out and I just want to binge it and do the, are you with me on this? And it's like there are things in our lives that we care about, we believe it, and yet we just don't get around to it. That's why I think when it comes to evangelism, I look at you people and I go, I believe you believe it. There's people here, you really believe the gospel. And I think you care about people. But I think life happens and we get distracted. And I wonder if Satan sometimes just goes, you know what? I don't need to get them not to believe or to be hateful people. I just need to keep them busy. I just need to keep them distracted. And so I would just ask you to think about that motivation. For Paul, he was distressed in his heart to the point that he just had to tell somebody. And so maybe for you, listen, the only way I know how to get myself to care more about something or to actually follow through with something is two things. One is prayer. Prayer rhymes with care. And if I want to care about something, I need to pray about it. And so I put it in my list. God, show me someone that I can tell about Jesus. Or I have actually people by name that I'll be praying for. I would suggest that to you as well. Maybe there are people in your life, maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a neighbor, that you just write their name down, and when you come to your prayer lists in the morning or at night or whenever you pray, just pray for them. And you watch how God begins to change your heart. So many people think that prayer is to change God. I think prayer so many times changes me. And next thing you know, I care more. You know the other thing that I do when I have something I believe in and I care about, but I can't seem to get myself to do it, is accountability. If I'm at the gym and I just can't seem to get the intensity level where I need it to be, go get a trainer. And next thing you know, they're in your face, come on, one more, and it's like, it's not like I'm getting educated, like if you lift heavy things, good things happen. Like, I know that. But to have somebody in your life that's going, go for it, come on. And I think there are times that I've had really great success in evangelism or caring about people. Sometimes I'll get in a small group and we will say, hey, every time we get together, let's just ask each other, who you praying for? It's just a simple thing. So if you're in a small group, maybe you add that to your agenda. Like take 3 minutes and just go, hey, let's just go around real quick. Who are you praying for that they would come to know Jesus? Who are you praying for? Who are you praying for? Who are you going to invite? Who are you going to eat with? Who are you going to hang out? Who are you going to serve? And just pray for people. That's the motivation of evangelism. Let's keep going. The method of evangelism. The method of evangelism. Now, most of the time I'm doing evangelism, I'm leading with love. I'm leading with some sort of felt need that people have. If they're lonely, then it's friendship. If it's look what Jesus did. When there were people that were hungry, he would feed them. If there were people that were needed encouragement, Jesus would encourage them. You meet a felt need. We see that all throughout the New Testament. I'll tell you a story. I get my hair cut at Great Clips, obviously. And here's the deal. I would go the same day every time. It'd be about every 4 weeks or so I'd get my hair cut. And every time I would go there, it'd be the same lady would cut my hair. Her name was Amy. And like over time, you just kind of strike up a conversation. And she eventually would say, well, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, well, I work at a church. And, we started to have, some sort of friendship or relationship because she's cut my hair all the time. And one day when I came in and I sat down and I said, hey, how you doing? And she goes, I'm okay. But there was something about the way she said it that just kind of struck me. And for whatever reason I was on a good day. And so I leaned in, I'm like, are you really okay? What's going on? And over the course of a haircut, she just starts to talk to me about how her mother is battling cancer. And how it's hard because she's the only daughter to support, and with the chemo, you got to take mom to appointments, and sometimes it's hard for her because she has to get off work, and when she gets off work, there's no money, and her mom doesn't have a lot, and so she was just going through all this, and we get to the end of the haircut, and I'm just we're wrapping it up, and I go, hey, let me ask you this, what would really encourage your mom? And she goes, honestly, we've been hoping for a wig. We're just trying to figure out because she's lost her hair and she just has such a hard time with that. And I said, okay, we wrapped up the haircut. And I went out, paid for the haircut, went out and I got in the car and I got on the Facebook, right? And I've got friends on Facebook, okay? And so I just went out there and I said, hey, I've got somebody that could really use a wig. I don't know where to get a wig. How could I get a wig? And sure enough, man, the church showed up as the church. Because the church was like, we'll pay for the wig. Somebody else was like, there's a program where you can get a free wig. You can go to this store and get a wig. I could have gotten 100 wigs for this lady. And anyway, so I write down some information where she's going to get a free wig. I go back into the great clips. Now, I don't know if you've ever gone back into the place that you just got your hair cut. It creates stress with people. She thinks like she put a divot in my head or my ear's bleeding or whatever. But I'm just like, no, everything's fine. I just wanted you to know that I talked to some folks at my church, and here's a free wig for your mom. Woo, she just starts crying. Why? Because she experienced the love of Jesus. Now, you want to know how that story ends? Would you welcome Amy? Amy, come on up here. I want you to tell it. No, I'm just kidding. That would be, listen, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. What are they going to do? Fire me? No, actually, it did. She came to church. Her mom came to church. Her daughter came to church, right? And it was because someone led with love. It's just a little bit of the church showing love. I love this church and how it shows love. Right now, we have a backpack drive going on. We got 50,000 documented acts of kindness going out around the world. I love that. We have a care center. We've got a vision from our senior pastor who's like, and we need more care centers, right? We need more of that to happen. And you guys show up whenever there's an opportunity, right? COH, Christmas, whatever it is, you guys show up and you show love to people. What's interesting to me is what we learn in Acts 17 is this idea of love, but loving people enough to give them truth. Because love and truth really need to go together when it comes to evangelism. Because if you give people truth, and this has been something that the church, I think in the United States, has struggled with a little bit. If you give truth without love, you're doing this wrong. God's disappointed in that. You give people, there's only one way. You give people truth, but there's no love with it. That comes across as mean. And it might be true, but it's just not all that effective. But then on the flip side, I think sometimes we get this wrong too. Sometimes there are churches that are giving a lot of love with no truth. It doesn't matter about this, doesn't matter about that, just come on in, it doesn't matter, And so truth and love have to go together because truth without love is mean. Love without truth is meaningless. So truth and love have to go together. And Paul in this passage comes to these people and loves them enough to tell them the truth. Look in verse 2, it says, as was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the scriptures, teaching them the Bible, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. Then it goes down and says this in verses 22. He says, Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus, think Congress, like movers and shakers in that time. And he said, people of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. It's like we have all the gods covered, and if there's one we don't know, here's one to cover that one. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I am going to proclaim to you. In other words, you're not getting this right. Let me tell you what's right. And what's interesting is that he does it sort of understanding culture. Understood that when he came to the Jews, he was using the scriptures, which they already believed in. When he comes to the Areopagus and dealing with the Athenians, he comes with one of their very own idols and starts where they are. He meets them where they are in their culture. It's one of the reasons that churches have changed over the last 100 years. Like, it used to be that if you went to church, we all sat in pews. It used to be that every church had stained glass. It used to be that there were two instruments in a church. It was a piano and an organ. I mean, depending on which church you went to, but there were just these ways of doing things. And what's interesting about this church, and as someone sort of who grew up watching this church, some of you pioneered. And then some of you have joined in like I did. You joined in. This is one of the churches that changed the culture of church literally for the entire world. This church, like what we're a part of. And so I would say to us, it is important that we accept that legacy, and also as we look forward to say, hey, what are the ways that we get, the message never changes, but the methods, they can change. Anyway, so Paul goes on in verse 24, because he talks about the unknown God, and then he says, okay, let me tell you who he is. He says, the God who made the world and everything in the world. He starts with creation. He says, everything in the world that is Lord of heaven and the earth, and does not live in temples made by human hands. And he's not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. Paul tells them the truth. He loves them enough to tell them the truth. Let me pause and ask you, if you care about people and people knowing God, do you need more help in regards to the love? Or do you need more help in regards to the truth? And maybe that's something you work on. Maybe that's the next step for you. What are some of the ways that we need to grow in order to answer people's questions? We got Lee Strobel's going to be coming to church in the next few weeks. He wrote the book Case for Christ, Case for Faith. But he's an apologist. It'd be a great Sunday for you to be here. To kind of bone up on and get introduced maybe to the world of apologetics. But I will tell you this. There's a truth that you have that no one else has, and it's a powerful truth, and that is the truth of your story. The truth of how God made a difference in your life. And you can take that story and lovingly share that with people and watch God move in powerful ways. The motivation of evangelism, the method of evangelism, and then the movement of evangelism. Like I said, in the New Testament, the gospel spread like wildfire. I mean, it just exploded on the scene. And one thing that I think is interesting, when you look at this story, Paul wasn't alone. He had Silas there. Timothy was on his way. In fact, a lot of the evangelism that happened in the New Testament, it didn't happen alone. Jesus was often with his disciples. There was that time that Jesus was in a house, and there were 4 friends with a paralytic, and those 4 friends are the ones that brought him. It wasn't one person, but it was 4 people bringing him and lowered him and introduced him to Jesus. Jesus, when he sent out his disciples to tell others about him, remember how he sent them out 2 by 2? Oftentimes when people talk about evangelism, they talk about it like it's just this individual thing, that I sit down with one person and we talk about this. But most often in the New Testament, it's not that way. It's a team sport. When I was in school, I played football, and there was, every day after school we'd have practice, and one day in particular, there was a girl at our school that I was sweet on, let's say. She was cute, and so I did a really brave thing. We did not have text back then, so I took a note paper, and I wrote down, "Do you like me? Circle 1, yes or no." Some of you did this as well. I folded this up. I gave it to my friend to give to her friend to give to her. By the way, I also said, if you do like me, meet me after school before football practice out on the athletic field, right? So I give that to my friend, to give to her friend, to give to her. Once I did that, do you think I was paying attention in any more of my classes? No way. Like history came, I don't care about history. Math comes, I don't care about math. All I'm waiting is for that final bell. And when that final bell hit, you guys, I darted down to the locker room. I put on my pads, I put on my cleats, and I ran out to the field, and she was there. I kind of thought you would, come on. I mean, it worked, right? She was there. And so I decided, we're going to take a nice romantic walk around the athletic track together. And we held hands, not like this, but like this, because that makes all the difference. And everything was going so great. We were walking around the track, and until we got to this one section of the track that was next to the woods, that was next to this little neighborhood, because when we got over there was two guys that popped out. And these guys, there were two of them, there's only one of me. And these guys were shaving. I was not yet shaving. And, these guys, they just started making fun of us, picking on us. And that's one thing if you want to pick on me, right? But then they started picking on her. And I have to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to be bold? Am I going to do the right thing, right? So I'm like, hey, listen, pal, you can't talk to her like that. And he's like, oh, yeah? I'm like, yeah, oh, yeah. And we go back and forth, and it just sort of escalates. Oh, yeah. And finally, we end up doing the dance of the tough guys. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but it's basically when one person goes like this, chest out, arms back, one cock like this. He's doing the same thing. His head cocks like this. And we just start dancing around each other like, who's going to go first? Well, here's what happens. I'm going around this guy. And remember, I said there were two of them. His friend, at just the right time, when I'm not looking, he gets down on all fours right behind me. Yeah, and so right at the right time, this guy pushes. I go to put my leg back to steady myself, but I can't because that guy's right there. So instinctually, I just do a back hand flip, land like, do you believe that's what happened? I'm a pastor. Anyway. Okay, you're right. That's not what happened. I fell head over heel, slammed into the fence at the end. I'm seeing stars, but that's not all I saw. I looked out. Remember I said this was on the football field right after school, right before football practice? I look over, and the sea of red and white football jerseys, because my football team saw everything that had happened. And they came, and do you think those two guys stood up to my team like I'd stood up to the two guys? No, they ran away like little fraidy cats, right? Now, why did I tell you that story? Because that's how I met my wife. No, it's not. It's not. That's two in one service. You really have to be more skeptical, guys. You really. I tell you that because I knew I was out in front of the team the whole time. I mean, for me to be bold, to stand up against insurmountable odds, to stand up against something that would maybe otherwise have scared me and made me shrink back. Do you know why I was able to do it? Because I knew I had a team. And the New Testament is full of one another phrases. That we as a church are supposed to pray for one another, bear one another's burdens, encourage one another. We're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to serve one another. We're supposed to be this group. We're supposed to be this family. We're supposed to be this army of God that are on mission. And so I would say to you that I think the best way for us to do evangelism is not all of us one at a time. I think we do it together. And so I love that you give money to this place. Everybody gives a little bit of money. Next thing you know, we've got a high school summer camp that's going on, and I guarantee you there are kids, they're giving their lives to Jesus because of that. It's happening right now. You come and you serve. You serve. And we see amazing things happen. People getting baptized, people coming to Christ. Why? Because you create an atmosphere for that to happen. We don't have to do it just one-off. We can all do that together. I love the small groups that are centered around affinity, like pickleball groups or chess playing groups or whatever. And next thing you know, these groups are going out together. And next thing you know, people are coming to know Christ because people are just being friends, playing together, eating together, loving each other. And the next thing you know, the movement is explosive. I have to end with this. It's the way the chapter ends in verse 32. It's the three responses to the gospel. It says, when they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others said, we want to hear you again on this subject. And at that, Paul left the council. Some of the people actually became followers of Paul, and they believed. And so, see the three responses. As we share the gospel with the world, maybe even as people come and hear about Jesus, even in our church today, there's typically three responses. One, they mock it. People go, that's ridiculous. I don't want anything to do with that. If people do that, you don't get angry, you don't get defensive, you just turn up the love. Just turn up the love. You see, the second group, they said, hey, we want to hear you again on this subject. Some people don't mock it, some people delay it. And that's understandable, because when you think about what the gospel is, it is a worldview changing thing. And so for some people, we just need to be patient. We just need to keep showing up. We just need to keep praying for them, serving them, loving them. And then finally, it says that some of the people became followers of Paul and they believed. They followed what Paul said. They gave their life to Jesus and they surrendered themselves to the gospel. My hope, Willow, is that we would be a people that are so in love with God and so in love with the people that God's in love with that we couldn't help but to tell them about Jesus with truth and with love. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for the example of that New Testament church. Thank you that you loved us enough to send your one and only Son. Thank you that by faith in his death and burial and resurrection, Lord, his overcoming death and his overcoming sin, Lord, by putting our faith in him, that we have the opportunity to overcome death and sin as well. God, for those of us that have not yet done that, I pray that you give us the courage to take that step. Even today, the Bible says today is the day of salvation. And Lord, for those of us that have been following Jesus, have given our life to him, I pray that we'd be so motivated to tell others about him. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.